let the kid be who they are physically and mentally. Don't try to change them and put them in a cookie-cutter style of hitting, style of catching, style of pitching. The more you try to do that, the more people I think you eliminate.
Welcome to episode 260 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. We have ourselves quite the episode to get to with 4 guests from this past weekend's Blue Jays Academy National Coaches Clinic. So let's take a quick look at the news headlines from this past week. We'll start with the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, where the class of 2024 was unveiled. Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, and Joe Mauer received the call from Cooperstown Tuesday evening, all securing the needed 75% to get in. They'll join manager Jim Leyland, who was selected by the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee in early December for the induction ceremony July 21st. While he didn't receive enough votes to get in again this year, former Calgary Cannons Alex Rodriguez and Omar Vizquel saw their share of the vote stay relatively stable from last year. For a full rundown of the results, as well as a look at the Alberta connections to all 3 of the new inductees, our Ian Wilson has penned another great story, which you can read at albertadugoutstories.com. Amidst news of new academy programs in Red Deer and Medicine Hat recently, another program is coming next fall. The Sherwood Park Minor Baseball Association has announced it's partnering up with the Holy Redeemer Catholic School to create the Raiders Baseball Academy. So stay tuned for more on that program in the weeks and months ahead. And Baseball Alberta is looking for umpires heading into the 2024 season. NUCP clinics are being held for Level 1 and Level 2 umpires all over the province with dates in February, March, and April. And speaking of Baseball Alberta, they've also put out a call for girls and women's provincial team coaches. For more information on both opportunities, head to baseballalberta.com. Let's get on to this week's guests, and they all come from the Blue Jays Academy National Coaches Clinic at Weber Academy just outside of Calgary. Dozens of coaches spent last weekend learning more about how they can get the most out of their teams through drills, practices, and even game planning with several high-profile guest speakers, including former Toronto Blue Jays Pat Borders, Devon White, Buck Martinez, and Ernie Whitt, as well as Baseball Canada Women's National Team and Vancouver Canadians coach Ashley Stephenson, and former MLB hurler and Weber Academy Senior Director of Baseball Operations Chris Reitsma. The weekend also featured a youth clinic on Saturday morning, which is when we were able to sit down with each of the guests. Leading off the podcast this week is Calgary's own Chris Reitsma.
Chris, the Blue Jays Academy Coaches Clinic here in your own backyard. How cool is it to have them here and to experience this, but also to give back to the community and the kids here?
Yeah, just amazing in every way. All the credit goes to the Weber family for dreaming something like this up and having facility to host a wonderful event like this. And when the Blue Jays contacted me, it was kind of a no-brainer. The Rogers Center is under construction right now, so they couldn't have the coaches clinic there. And like you said, this is a facility that is meant for things like this. So it's a blessing for me to be a part of this organization, and then to open our doors to local coaches from around the country, and great Blue Jays from the past to come be a part of it as well.
How much of it is picking brains? I noticed you were sitting there chatting with Pat and Devon earlier. You're chatting with Ashley at the end there. It's an opportunity not just to showcase your facility, but also to maybe grow your knowledge base a little bit too, I suppose.
Sure. And in this game, no matter what you've done, where you've been, or what you have been a part of, you're always learning. And that's one thing I've learned. So yeah, it's important to ask these questions, right? And you're looking at Pat Borders and Devon White, and telling them stories about me being in high school, watching them play in the World Series, and that's fun, right? I'm still a fan and still a kid at heart, and so yeah, it's neat to have all these guys here, and Ernie Whitt was a manager of mine in the World Baseball Classic, and then everyone knows Buck, so it's great. It's great to be a part of, and really glad they can all make it.
Kind of an all-encompassing coaches clinic too. When you look at the roster, everybody brings something different to the table. So when you look ahead to this afternoon session, for example, what do you see out of that? What are you hoping to get out of it yourself, and what are you hoping to give to the coaches who are in attendance?
Well, I'm looking forward to listening to everybody, and then when I get up there, I think my main goal is to think about who I'm speaking to and what is kind of the hot button topics of what needs to be talked about from the pitching perspective in amateur baseball in Alberta, in Canada. So I'll hit on a bunch of those topics and hopefully have some good questions coming back at me, and be able to hopefully be informative and helpful.
You've got your pulse or finger on the pulse of baseball here, and especially from a pitching perspective. What do you think are some of the big issues right now when it comes to pitching in this country?
I think the search for velocity at too young of an age is a problem for me. I think that people think about velocity as the only metric that really matters, and that's a problem. I think the whole weighted ball world is an issue right now. I think that we're dealing with kids that we're putting at risk by giving them too much weight, or kind of messing them up in a lot of ways physically, causing health concerns, and also not really getting them to understand the intricacies of pitching. So that's one of them, I'd say. And then just being able to teach throwing from the right perspective, and proper throwing, proper long toss, what's important, why it's important. So those are a couple of topics that I think are, not only Alberta needs to hear that, but, North America wide, basically.
Especially, I've talked to a lot of guys who have had Tommy John as an example, and they're doing it at 16 or 18. Like, that should be kind of a bit of a red flag, shouldn't it? That maybe we need to take the foot off the gas a little bit and teach these kids how to pitch versus how to throw.
Correct. And that starts with mechanical frameworks and understanding that you have to be, controlled aggression as a pitcher rather than being out of control with, recoils and head whacks and, arm angles that are inconsistent. It's an unnatural movement throwing a baseball. And when you overweight things and underweight things and overload and underload the shoulder joint, the elbow joint, that's a big problem. And it's epidemic with the amount of kids that are coming down with Tommy John surgery or shoulder blowouts because they haven't been preparing the right way, and then they just grip and rip and doing it the wrong way. So, it's very prevalent, and that's something that we're trying to educate and get people to hopefully buy into the right way of doing things.
Is there also an element of, I'll call it, whether it's multi-sport or multi-positional playing? We talk a lot about, like, say, 11-year-old kids who are being thrown out there every 3 or 4 days because they're the ace of the staff, so to speak. Is there an element of needing to teach coaches that, hey, there's some value in letting kids do other things, whether it be on the baseball field or elsewhere?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think being a multi-sport athlete as a young kid is extremely important, especially if you just want to focus primarily on baseball. Well, it's a skill-specific sport, but you can only throw so much. You can only hit so much, right? So getting coaches to understand, for instance, your question when you talk about maybe you play 3 games in a weekend or 4 games in a weekend, and the kid's playing, pitches the first game, and then he goes to play shortstop the next game, and then he's out in the outfield and he's firing balls. You have to be able to understand the torque and the workload that you put on the kid's body and arm, and then be able to coach around that, with safety being, and health being first and foremost.
One of the guys that I always looked up to, and he didn't have a ton of velocity, was Greg Maddux. And is there an element of that you kind of teach in a lot of the kids is, hey, like, you don't have to be the 100-mile-an-hour guy. You can, as long as you can place it, you're good as gold. Yeah.
I mean, movement, location are more important than velocity for me. I think that if you talk to good hitters, would they rather face, a 91, a 92 mile an hour fastball that's moving on a corner, or a 96 mile an hour fastball that's straight down the middle with a force? And they're going to they love hitting that velocity, the higher level guys. So here we teach proper long toss, understanding that hand speed and velocity will come, but we preach change up before breaking ball and understanding the intricacies of pitching rather than, just grunting and groaning and letting it rip.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a couple of other questions. One, Simon Baker from your program had a massive Canadian Future Showcase, goes home with MVP. He's committed to an NCAA Division I school. How proud of him, and how proud are you as a whole of being able to have a kid like that show up as he did?
Yeah, it's great. It's great for him first and foremost, and for his family. We are so proud of our athletes, and if that's a kid going to Division I, or a kid realizing his dream and going to a CCBC school or a junior college down in the States, we're equally happy for everybody. Simon's a special talent, and it's been great. As our program develops and grows, this is only our 3rd year in existence, so we're going to see more and more kids get if you're not getting better in this facility with the coaching we have here, then something's wrong. And so these kids are getting better. And as time goes on, there's going to be more and more kids committing to, the top programs, and that's great.
You mentioned Simon's a special talent. What is it about him that sets him apart? What, in your eyes, allowed him to be as good as he was, especially in that showcase?
Well, I think for one, it's, he's blessed with strength, with speed, with arm speed, arm quickness. He's also blessed with the ability to put bat on ball. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. And his swing has really progressed. So you put all those things together, and him not being intimidated, and it was a great tournament for him. That's wonderful. So, he moves very well athletically, and that's what we teach here. And he's just a very good athlete. You watch him dunk a basketball, he flies. There's certain intangibles you can't teach, and he possesses those.
Another guy that you've chatted with over the years and worked with, obviously, is Michael, who's been traded to Chicago now and looking to bounce back, gets a change of scenery. I understand he's back. He was back in Calgary recently. Did you have a chance to talk with him, one? And two, what's been the tone? What's he feeling heading into this next spring training with a bit of a different mindset, maybe?
Well, it's been special for me to be part of his life. I've coached him since he was 13, and to see his progressions and make it to the big leagues and be an all-star, it's been great. Obviously, there's been some injuries along the way with Achilles problems and different things. It was important for him to get a fresh start, and so we were excited for him to go to Chicago, which is awesome. He works out here every single day with me. And it's fun to watch his progressions in terms of, throwing wise. We've done a lot of different work mechanically, just making necessary changes to make sure it's more efficient and protecting his body. So it's been great. He's in Chicago right now for the Fan Fest, so that's why he's not here. But he's been here every day, and he's been great with the kids as well. So he's one of those guys that comes in, gets his workout, and then he actually helps with the Wildcat players too, which is very special.
What do you predict out of him? What do you see out of him this winter that makes you go, he can be a force with Chicago, that he can turn that corner and become that contributing, even if he becomes a bit of 50% of what he was in 2019, he's still going to be a very effective major leaguer.
I think the sky's the limit for him. I really do. And it's all been about health, right? With his lower body and getting him healthy. Now he has the opportunity, and he's put the work in. So I'm very, obviously, bullish on what he's going to be able to do. Not just because I love the kid and he's worked so hard and we're good buddies, but just because I really believe in the work he's put in. So I think it's going to be a great year.
Final question for you. You've been involved with the Baseball Canada junior national team as well. You're getting to see kids this age, working hard and hoping to have a future in baseball as well. What do you see in the scene here in Canada and what it's progressed to? What's the next few years look like for baseball in this country?
I think it's, all arrows are pointing up. Facilities like this coming on board, facilities across the country are getting better and better. I think it's just a matter of time. I think we're getting better as a group as time goes on. I think post-COVID there was a little bit of a hiccup on the junior national team where, we didn't quite have the experience that, we weren't allowed to play like some of the American kids were and whatever it might be. But we're going to get back to that, and we've had success in that level in the past. I'm just looking forward to kids really being passionate about the game, putting the work in, and dreaming, and that's why we're here.
Chris, really appreciate the time. Thanks for having us here at Weber Academy.
You bet. Thank you.
Next up is Ashley Stephenson, who we last chatted with for episode 199 of the podcast back in September of 2022. It's been a crazy year or so for the Baseball Canada legend as she started coaching with the Vancouver Canadians and has continued her coaching duties with the women's national team as well, and she was definitely a ball of energy throughout the entire morning.
Ashley, welcome back. Glad to have you. You're back here in Alberta.
Yeah.
It's a little chillier than we probably like, but at the same time, you get to be inside here at Weber. What's it like getting to be with the kids and get to instill that love of baseball into the little ones?
You know what? This is so fun. This facility, I've never been to this complex before. I know the last few years some of the other instructors said that they've been here and they've kind of got to see it develop over the last couple of years. And this is my first time here. This academy is really quite unbelievable. And then it's nice to be able to host things like this. So I haven't run an amateur clinic in well over a year now, just because last year I was away from it from the summer. And it's so fun. Like, I teach, but I teach high school kids, and it's really, really nice sometimes to see the little ones just enjoy it. Like, we're playing wiffle ball baseball right now, and you'd think it was Game 7 of the World Series, right? So it's easy. Everybody's got a smile on their face, people cheering, having fun. So this is like why I started playing baseball. This is why I still am involved in baseball. So I love doing stuff like this.
Obviously, you get a nice supporting cast to go along with it as well. The camaraderie, I notice everybody's making their way around, talking to one another. Talk about being able to have that team beside you and be able to really kind of develop that love of the game. And also, I know there's a lot of parents upstairs even who are watching in disbelief saying, hey, there's some Baseball Canada and Toronto Blue Jays people here too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like some of the instructors we've been with as this amateur clinics for years, like 10, 15 years. We were joking about like the OGs and what we used to do years ago and stuff like that, and how many more people are involved with it, and how they've really grown that program, especially across Canada. Like, a lot of it obviously is in Ontario and stuff like that, but they've really done a great job of now making it countrywide. And you know, we talk about the Blue Jays being Canada's team, and so it's awesome that they kind of take the show on the road, and a lot of other provinces get to experience a lot of what they do. But even having like the former big leaguers out and stuff like that, like I've had an opportunity to work with some of them and whatever, and they, you know, come over and give you a hug and say hi. And Devo and I were chatting about what's going to happen at spring training and stuff like that. So for me, it's really cool. I grew up watching him play, watching him win World Series, and cheering him on, and now I've had an opportunity to get to know him and work with them and chat with them, and so lots of these people have become really good friends. And so being out here with the kids is always fun, but kind of having our like support group and our group of friends too behind the scenes is really nice, mainly for development, but for camaraderie as well.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you got the kids here this afternoon, you got the coaches back in session.
Yeah.
For those who aren't able to make it, give a little sneak peek. What's maybe some of your main takeaways, some of your main messages for those coaches who are teaching these kids or are coaching these kids and getting at the grassroots?
I'm covering lots of kind of infield fundamental stuff, and going to try to have some progression. So if you have like some players who are a little bit more advanced or whatever. So for me, I kind of go like switch to a teaching brain, right? So like, here is my general message, and it will work for like a main cohort of people, and here's some modifications you can make in either directions, a little bit easier, a little bit more challenging, depending on your athlete. And then what I'm going to talk about is like how you would now implement that into a practice, right? So lots of people, if they're not a baseball person, they think about baseball and they think it's slow, it's boring, you're standing around, right? But it doesn't have to be at all. Like, that game speeds up a lot, and the way you set up your practices and run your practices can have everybody moving and stuff like that. So a lot of what I'm going to try to talk to coaches about is not just infielding, but how you can then implement that infielding stuff into a really good practice plan, so that people are moving all the time. Kids are like more touches on the ball, more reps and stuff like that, and not standing in line and watching for a good portion, right? Like, if you do, you can learn, and then we can make adjustments. So I'm going to touch on all kinds of things in 45 minutes.
Well, one of the things too, and I've talked to a couple of the coaches already about it, is that idea of the multi-positional player, right? Ohtani has obviously put that in the spotlight in a big way, but when you think about even at the grassroots, you see kids pitching, specializing early on, or, hey, you're our shortstop because you're the star. Why not expose these kids to all the different positions and let them see what it's like? Because you never know where they might actually really love playing versus being good at it.
Yeah. And honestly, it just helps them learn the game. Like, we talk all the time about like a baseball IQ or whatever sport you're playing, right? And so if I'm playing shortstop all the time, I don't really necessarily know first base responsibilities or second base responsibilities unless I'm working with them in the middle or something like that, or quite frankly, center field, left field, right? And so the more positions you play, the more you learn and understand the game, and then the more of an asset you can be too. Like, I was doing infielding here, and I said, you know, how many people are just second base or just first base or whatever, and there's a few hands, and I was like, well, if I'm a coach and let's say whoever's supposed to play third base isn't able to make it, and I ask you and you're like, oh, I only play second base. Okay, well, you could play third base for a whole game, or you could play second base for half a game. Like, to me, I'm going to play third base for a whole game. Mm-hmm. I want to get out there, right? So just like, you're an asset to your team, to the coaching staff, but just for their development. Mainly it's just for their development. You get different positions bring their own set of challenges, and they get to learn the game a little bit better. So, but it's like all comes back to like a multi-sport athlete, and like that kind of thing, especially at a young level. So it's probably a larger topic discussion, but for me, I'm a big fan of a multi-sport athlete, and I'm a big fan, especially at a young age, of them playing different positions in the sport.
We talked about the athlete development. How about the coaching development from your perspective? Because you've had a whirlwind last couple of years since last time you and I chatted. What's the last year specifically been like for you with the national program and with the Blue Jays and being able to see baseball at a bunch of different levels?
It's been, you're right, it's been a whirlwind of a few years for me. First of all, like, super grateful for my opportunities. I think honestly, like, baseball's in a good spot in this country, but obviously there's room for improvement and development. Me personally, like, my development has been huge. The Jays have been really great at giving me opportunities to learn it and to take things on. And just like players, like, you don't learn a lot if you sit and watch and listen, right? Like, it's good to understand and whatnot, but you got to do it to be able to know you can do it, so other people know you can do it, and to develop, make mistakes, and grow and get better. And they've really given me those opportunities. Like, I got to be a first base coach multiple times this season. I led our outfielders, even though I'm doing some infield stuff here, I led our outfielders last year, and they gave me like full throttle with those guys. And if I had questions, then I just went to people like Devo, etc., for some clarification or whatever. But they've been excellent in my development, mainly because they let me coach like anybody else would be allowed to coach, and that's how you get better, right? Like, you just do it, you learn, you grow, you do research, you talk to good people, lots of people, and just kind of build your toolbox, so to speak, and try to get better. So I appreciate what they've done for me. They've really allowed me, and I love it, and I work hard. So it's kind of been a really good fit. Maybe a bit better than I even thought it would be, to be honest.
Very cool. When you think about the women's national team now, I know you've had some winter meetings, kind of getting players to know each other and that kind of stuff. What are you getting the sense of with this team as you go about things? I know you're not making any decisions yet, but do you get the sense is this going to be a young team, a scrappy team? You've seen some of the athletes. What are you getting the sense of?
I mean, I think a Canadian team's always going to be a scrappy team. I really do. Like, I think they play with a lot of heart and hustle, and I think that will always be a characteristic that the coaching staff is looking for. But it'll be a younger team for sure. We'll have some veteran presence, but it'll be a young team for sure, and that's okay. Like, we don't have a junior national team, and we've talked about that as Baseball Canada program, and the need for that, because like, we don't have a chance to develop then at that level and bring people onto the national level. So some of our best athletes you're taking a shot at that level, and you're going to hope you get them for 5, 6, 7 plus years and really work with them. So that's one of the reasons that they're pretty young. But I think we'll be a scrappy team. We're really using the winter to do some pre-scout of other teams, pitching, hitting. Like, there's video from the WBSC qualifiers last year. So we're doing our research and we're doing that stuff to help players too learn and like talk about baseball IQ. Like, how do you want to pitch people? How do you want to attack at the plate? Like, what pitches are you looking for and stuff like that. So that helps them come with a plan and all that kind of good stuff. The fun stuff that rounds out like a complete baseball player. But yeah, I'm not sure how it'll all shape out yet, because there's a lot of athletes in the winter meetings, and obviously it's not just those athletes who have an opportunity to make it. We'll be scouting and have eyes on lots of people this summer, but scrappy, I think, would be a really good word. I think we've always got some grit, and I love that about our program, really.
Fantastic stuff. I know there's some picture taking. I don't want you to miss that. So Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Our next conversation is with former MLB All-Star, Gold Glove outfielder, and 3-time World Series champion Devon White. His 21-year pro career included stops with the Edmonton Trappers in 1985, 1986, and 1990, so Alberta is somewhere he's been familiar with for a while now. Unfortunately, my recording device ran into some technical difficulties during this interview. However, I was able to salvage most of the conversation. So instead of the full interview this time around, let's break it into pieces, starting with his thoughts on working with the kids first thing on a Saturday morning.
Never a bad thing. I try to bring some of the, heat from down south up, but it didn't work.
Talk a little bit about being able to give back to the community, not just in Toronto, but across Canada. I mean, the Blue Jays really are a national team, and people love you from coast to coast.
Yes, well, the support we have for the whole country, even from this side of the world, you might say, it's great. So when we have the opportunity, to give back to the young guys here, and this is a great facility too. We're not outside, so it's great.
We then talked about some of his messages heading into the clinic, which included the value of playing different positions to help understand the game as a whole. We also talked about his travels through Canada as a player and now as a coach and guest speaker at different events.
Talk a little bit about the transformation, I guess, of baseball in Canada from your eyes, because you've been doing these camps for a while now. What are you seeing as you go from coast to coast and see the talent that's available out there?
A lot more kids from Canada is getting drafted in the MLB, and that's the good thing because they're starting at a good age, and parents is taking them away from soccer and hockey, a little bit more hockey, you might say, but you can see the transformation turning in the minor league. Seeing a lot of kids from Canada that's been in the T12. I don't know what they call it now, but that tournament they have in Toronto, you just see those kids grow. And in fact, we have two of them on our team. One was Deshaun Brown, was in the program in the Toronto area, and he's gone a long way. And he's projected in the next couple of years he might be in the big leagues.
Another guy you've had in the system, Damiano Palmiciani. I'm wondering what you see out of him, because he started off kind of slow, but man, he's really come along strong, hasn't he?
Yes, he is. A big, strong, power-hitting guy for us at third base, and I got the opportunity to see him this year. And he kind of reminded me, say, "Hey, Devo, you remember me? I was in such and some camp he went to." And I'm like, "No, but glad that you remember me." But he's turned into a big, strong kid.
When you think about sort of the evolution of the game from your perspective, not just from a talent, but also the attitude, there's a little bit of jump, a little bit of swagger maybe. As a coach who might be dealing with some of these new personalities, what do you tell the coaches out there to kind of bring everything down and make sure that the talent shines through, but also, you could allow for a little bit of fun in games too?
Well, it all depends on, what kind of coach you have. If it's a no-nonsense guy and he believes in respecting the game, and there's kids that are going, they're watching the highlight of the major league players and they're going out and doing the things that they're doing now. And I'm old school, so I don't agree with it. It's like, let's win a ball game, then we can show off, you might say.
From there, we talked more about his philosophies on coaching with a little nod to analytics, saying it's a tool but shouldn't be the be-all, end-all. We changed gears a bit to wrap things up and had to talk about his playing days in Alberta.
I got to ask, you're back here in a province that when you were younger as a player, you might have had a love-hate relationship with Alberta, in Edmonton specifically. What do you remember about your time with the Trappers?
Oh, it was definitely love. I was here for 2.5 years in Edmonton. I played in Calgary, played in Vancouver, so I enjoy my time, playing this side of the, the world, you might say. I use it that way, but playing on the northwest, you might say. It's just early in the year it was cold, but during the summer I really enjoy playing up here because of the weather. It was a lot cooler than south.
I was looking back on some of the files, and you'd said, it'd be nice to stay in California and play with the Angels full time versus going back and forth, because it's probably a long airplane ride back and forth. But when you think back on that time, how much did that kind of help frame your position on baseball and in life, because it kind of allowed you to deal with some of the failures of the game as well?
Yeah, well, the game is always going to be up and down, no matter where you play and what position you play. You just have to learn. And me and my ex-teammate Pat Borders was talking about it. Is just nowadays kids are not used to failure, and we fail, but we got to find out why we fail and how to get out of the slump or the failure, and not just giving up. And in today's day and age, it's kind of more of a they have to get a little push, and that's what the coaching comes in handy.
Fantastic. Final question for you, and I'll let you get going. What does the game of baseball mean to you?
Well, it's definitely my world. It's been my life, more than half of my my life, you might say. So I've been in the game for a long time, and just to see players enjoy and the game has grown. It's just been a pleasure be around.
Devon, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Our last guest on this week's show is Pat Borders, a two-time World Series champion with the Blue Jays and the 1992 World Series MVP. He had a 25-year pro career, which actually started here in Alberta in 1982 with the Medicine Hat Blue Jays. He hit .304 that season with 5 home runs and 33 RBI in 61 games as the Baby Jays earned their first and only Pioneer League championship. Borders was happy to chat about those memories as well as his values as a coach, which he did with the Williamsport Crosscutters from 2015 to 2019. Truth be told, he and I have been wanting to sit down for a while now to chat about his days in Medicine Hat.
Pat, first off, thanks so much for joining us. Talk about coming back to Canada, 1, and 2, being able to travel the country and being able to give back to the game like you do with camps like this.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun getting her back around ex-teammates. Buck Martinez, never got the opportunity to play with him, but it feels like a teammate because he was around so much. We got to speak together, a good relationship with him. Getting back to Western Canada, it's always beautiful out here. The people are really refreshing to be with, and it's really, really good to see as a ball went by our head. Really good to see these kids learning baseball in a facility to make them compete with the American kids. As in the past, I think they were at a slight disadvantage. This facility right here is giving an even playing field.
Talk a little bit about the kid aspect for a minute and getting them to love the game again. I mean, it's one thing to, especially here in Canada, you battle with hockey, you battle with football. Being able to instill a love of the game at something like this, it's got to be a good feeling.
I think it's good to have that competition with different sports like that. You'll have different kids that fill their niche, whatever it may be. As long as they can be exposed to different things. I think the problem previously with the lack of exposure for the kids to baseball. There's some kids that are going to like hockey more, and rightfully so, and then there's some kids that are going to like baseball also, rightfully so, to them. So I think everything's going in the right direction.
Obviously, you get to have the kids this afternoon, you get to talk to the coaches as the coaching instructor. What do you tell, or the catching instructor, what are you telling those coaches about getting the most out of their catching position and making sure that they're getting the most out of their kids game in and game out?
I'll take a snippet from it. Let the kid be who they are physically and mentally. Don't try to change them and put them in a cookie cutter style of hitting, style of catching, style of pitching. The more you try to do that, the more people I think you eliminate. Let the kids, and any player at any age, let them expose what their abilities are and get the most out of that, I think is the best way to say it.
How important is it to also not, I'll call it, specialize in a position as well early on? I mean, you look at the kids and you're like, oh, that's going to be my pitcher because he can already throw 80, for example, or that's my shortstop. You're a prime example of someone who, third baseman converted to catcher, right? So how important is it for those coaches to keep that in mind, is that they should be all trying different positions?
Well, I think it's also good that you play the different sports. You mentioned different sports a few minutes ago. I think baseball will help you in hockey. I think hockey will help you in baseball, just as football helped me in baseball and vice versa. Also basketball, which I played growing up, helped you in different aspects of different sports. If you limit yourself and put yourself in a little hole, you're negating any kind of future athletic movements that are going to benefit you in a different sport maybe. I guarantee you that if you put someone on a hockey rink and you bring them out to baseball, there's going to be something that's going to make them a better baseball player, and probably vice versa as well.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how the dynamic has changed a little bit, because back when you and I were growing up, for example, we were kind of taught, hey, play, for example, hockey in the winter, basketball in the winter, and baseball in the summer, and then it kind of changed where it's like, no, you got to specialize, and 12 months a year you're specializing in this sport. It's kind of changing back, isn't it? Like, it feels as though parents are a little bit more open to the idea of having kids stretching out in different ways and learning different skill sets.
I don't know. I think at different parts of each country, I think you might find different results in that. But at the end of the day, I think you need to let the kid experience different things for the reasons I said before, but also for the mental reasons. You can get to where you can burn out a kid in a specific sport, and you're going to eliminate them from playing or really being good at it later, and possibly could have been good at it. I've seen kids that are really good and really talented at a baseball position, to name a few, and they play it so much, they get wore out by it so much that they just find joy in another sport, regardless if they're not quite as good.
Mm-hmm. when you look at the game in Canada, even from the days of 92, 93 and that, and after your playing career, you've been given back. And that, what are you noticing about the scene here in Canada? What are you noticing about the talent level that you're seeing out of the athletes here?
Well, surprisingly, I think you're going to see more baseball players and even football players come out of Canada as opposed to years past. This facility right here is like a prime example. I would love to have this in Florida. For different reasons. It's too hot down there sometimes in the summer, and vice versa. It's cold up here. But this is going to help these kids compete. It's going to let them start at a young age. You kind of think about golf. If you don't start golf at a young age, you probably are going to be tough and behind the 8 ball. If you want to be a high-level pro tourer type guy. And same thing with this right here. The higher level you get, the more you play at a younger age, the better you're going to be at all the sports.
I mentioned Medicine Hat. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it. 1982, you get drafted by the Blue Jays. They say your first assignment is in Medicine Hat, Alberta. What goes through your mind, especially when you don't have Google to see where on the map that might even be?
Well, we can take a step back further than that and said, who the hell were the Blue Jays? I was from Florida. Heck, I watched the Atlanta Braves, maybe the Cubs, because we had limited access to TV or any kind of knowledge. So the Blue Jays were completely off the radar. I didn't know who they were. Then they say, well, right now you got drafted by the Blue Jays, and you're going to Alberta, Canada. So I got to look up where Alberta is, because high school kids are not really paying too much attention to Western Canada, let alone Alberta. And so I go up here and had a great time. One of the most entertaining times. The kids off that team, the kids in and men now, I still have contact with them. Matter of fact, the center fielder I spoke to yesterday off my rookie ball team, and you keep in contact with those people forever. It was a wonderful environment. I couldn't ask for a better situation coming to high school.
Not only that, that team came together at the right time and managed to pull together a championship as well. The only one in that team's history. What was that run like, looking back on it, being able to win a championship at that age, at that level?
Well, I think we had good talent. We had some guys that played in the big leagues and played for a long time. But you had a really good environment to create a team, which I think sometimes is overlooked, especially nowadays. It's more of an individual sport, which is not, in my opinion. You play as a team. You do things as a team that aren't on paper, aren't on stats that help you win. And us being in the Silver Buckle Inn, I don't know if it even exists anymore.
It does, yeah.
That was where we all stayed, and it was like a college dorm. We would see each other, be around each other, except when we were sleeping. Sometimes fall asleep in the same room watching TV or playing cards, whatever it may be. But we had an absolute good time, and one of the closest teams. It would more than rival the teams that we won in 92 and 93, and I think that was a big part of why we won. We were so close and defended each other on and off the field, and it just became very close, and still keep in touch with most of those guys now.
Mm-hmm. Talk about Keith Gillam's performance in that final. Complete game, 6-1 victory. You got a front row seat to one of the best pitching performances I think that team ever saw. Yeah,
we got college players from all over the place. And here I was a high school kid myself. Cash Beecham, another person that was a younger fellow. We're throwing in with these college players, and they were good. Clemson, Jimmy Key, Arizona State. We had CJ playing first base. Stenhouse, the catcher. I think he was from Holy Cross. It was a nice blend of really good players, really high level players. No wonder we won. We had good talent, but once again, touching back to the Silver Buckle, I think that pulled us all together.
Dwayne Larson, what comes to mind when that name comes up?
Perfect mentality, attitude, and managerial style to make a kid better. He was very hard, very, very compassionate when he had to be, but a very hard-nosed person, no nonsense, hard worker. Required you to work hard, required you to respect him. And I think even kids today, I know kids back then especially, they want to have someone they respect and someone that requires and makes them respect them, and he was that guy.
Did you ever get fined for missing the bus or being late for the bus?
Not necessarily that year, but following years I remember getting fined many, many times.
I heard a story about how he was fining guys $50. I think Cash was the one who was telling me that story, and he said, I got nipped once, and when you're making $600 a month, that's a pretty big chunk of $50 out of your paycheck pretty quick.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that'll get your attention in a hurry. You can figure out how to pinch some pennies and find the places that are cheap to eat. I got fined consecutively like 2 or 3 nights in a row, me being the style of person I guess I was at the time, not by him, but by another manager, and it essentially equaled out to my whole salary for the month. So you really start pinching pennies.
A couple more for you. Thinking it back, and a decade later, you go and win a World Series, and then you win another one. How cool was it to be able to rise up the ranks? You had Jimmy Key on that team. You had David Wells on that team. Like, there were some guys who went up the ranks with you, even past Medicine Hat. And that team really kind of came together, didn't it, in for a long time?
I would say on average, you only have one person, maybe 1.5 percentage-wise, make it to the big leagues for one day off a team. We had several people make it for more than one day. I can't think of all that. There's probably another, maybe 10 people that made it to the big leagues. I'm guessing right off the top of my head, but some that had some long careers. Mm-hmm. And that's a very unusual mix of people. So whoever organized the draft, and also you talk about Dwayne Larson's, and the next year Dennis Holmberg. Those people influenced us in a very deep way that made us better players. And I would have to say they had a huge part in making that many people get to the big leagues.
Mm-hmm. Final question for you. It's one we ask everyone here on the show. What does the game of baseball mean to you?
Everyone says it means everything to you, but it's a family thing to me. You can't create this kind of camaraderie, brotherhood. People that I haven't met or not met haven't been around for a decade or 2 decades. When we get back together, it's like we saw each other yesterday. Absolutely, just a brotherhood that I would say would obviously not as hard as the military, but something similar to that.
Mm-hmm. Pat, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks again to Chris Reitsma, Ashley Stephenson, Devon White, and Pat Borders for joining us this week. And thanks again to the Blue Jays Academy crew for having us out on Saturday. We have one more conversation from the National Coaches Clinic, and that's with Buck Martinez, which will make up a part of next week's episode. So make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss that or any other future show. Before we go, we'd like to tip our caps to our Platinum supporters for all they do for us and for baseball in Alberta. The generosity of the Okotoks Dogs and AHP Academy have been integral in helping us tell the game stories in our province, helping us cover costs like web hosting fees and subscription services. For more on our partners and to get involved with your organization, head to albertadugoutstories.com/supporters. Until next time, thank you for all of your support online, on social, and on air of Alberta Dugout Stories.